I want to know what you think about the following statement, and it's not coming from me. A musician is there to please the audience. It's not about self-expression. Somewhere along the way, jazz lost this. The greatest artists reach the largest number of people while at the same time performing at a high level artistically. Lose either half of that equation, and you've failed. It's not enough to win the approval of your peers or yourself. I posed this question in a panel discussion recently, and the first response I got from the panel, I'm guessing, will be the same for many of you, and that is, I don't agree with any of that. It did, however, spark conversation in the audience, which indicates that others, like me, find it thought-provoking, and maybe a little bit nuanced beyond the immediate reaction of disagreement. The statement came from a comment on one of my videos, and there were other things said in the comment that I know some people will strongly disagree with. My intention is not to call out the commenter, and I think the elements that are controversial are the result of one person conflating what they hold to be true with universal truths. It raises questions that I want to discuss. First of all, if you're new to this channel, my name is Chase Sanborn, and I'm a jazz trumpet player based in Toronto. The first question that this comment brings to my mind is this: does a musician have a responsibility to please the audience? My gut reaction to that is no. A musician owes nothing to the audience, just as the audience owes nothing to the musician. We put what we do out there, and the audience can respond however they like. They can choose to listen or not listen. They can attend the show or not. They can even choose to criticize, to say that the music doesn't meet their expectations of what music should be. On the other hand, I don't think it's right to say that we owe nothing to the audience. But what we owe them is the same thing that we owe ourselves, and that is dedication to putting our heart and soul into the music we play. We may hope they like it. We do hope that. But in the end, the way we approach the music is based on how we feel and what we like. We are ultimately trying to live up to our own expectations, and from there, the chips fall where they may. As a listener, whether you like the music or you don't, or even whether you consider it to be good music or not, that's a subjective opinion. Maria Schneider once posed this question to a group of my grad students. What makes music good? The students threw out ideas like good rhythm or a catchy melody. But Maria's definition was, it's music that holds your interest. That simple definition encapsulates the full range of individual preference. What one person finds compelling, another finds repellent, and that's something I talked about in this video. If the question is whether a musician has a responsibility to play music that the audience will like, well, first of all, that's impossible because we can never please everybody. And even if you say, well, it should be music that large numbers of people will like, and that's how we know that it's good music, well, we may as well write off jazz entirely at that point, pledge our allegiance to Beyoncé, and be done with it. As in many things, we can look to Miles as an example because he, more than any other jazz musician, radically changed his style numerous times throughout his career. In the mid-60s, people lamented that Miles was no longer playing the music that he played in the 1950s. And when he embraced the fusion of jazz and rock heading into the 1970s, he was accused of selling out to popular taste, compromising his musical integrity for the sake of record sales. That's not entirely without justification because Miles was absolutely in search of an audience, to draw in young people who were listening to rock music. And yet, Bitches Brew turned out to be a precursor of a musical evolution or revolution, and Miles, as he had many times in the past, was there at the forefront of what was to be. Miles was also criticized for turning his back to the audience. He said it was because he faced in the direction that allowed him to hear the music better. So what is Miles' obligation in that situation? To face forward and address the paying customers as most popular entertainers would do? Or to do whatever he felt was necessary to play the music the way he wanted it to sound? That brings us to the question of whether a jazz musician should or must also be an entertainer. There are lots of great jazz musicians who are natural-born entertainers. Louis Armstrong, Fats Waller, Dizzy Gillespie. There are musicians who are in equal measure comedians, people like Victor Borge, Pete Barbuti, Fred Armisen. Years ago, I used to play with a guy who called himself Shocks Johnson. He was the frontman for a band called the Jive Bombers. Shocks died regrettably young, but the band is still around in Toronto, led by trombonist John Karpenko. A lot of the music of the Jive Bombers is in the style of Louis Jordan. It's fun, feel-good music. Shocks was the singer, but more to the point, he was a brilliant topical comic, and he would riff freely between the tunes. I would sometimes be doubled over in laughter listening to him as John counted off the next tune, and it was all I could do to get the horn up to my face and blow. In the audience, it was the same, and when they went from laughing hysterically to the band launching into "Ain't nobody here but us chickens," they went crazy. Now, I won't say that that's the best music I've ever played in my career, but it was some of the most fun I've ever had on a gig. These days, I have that kind of fun on gigs with Heather Bambrick, who's a former student and now a beloved friend and colleague. Heather is a great singer. She's also a voice actor on cartoons and commercials, and she's a very popular host on the Toronto radio station Jazz FM. That plays into another one of her strengths. She's a raconteur of the highest order. She relates stories from her life growing up in Newfoundland that has the band and the audience in stitches. Even when Heather tells a story that I've heard before, she's always got a new detail to add, and it's all true. She has an amazing memory, and the comedian's ability to look at and relate the trials and tribulations of life in a way that makes it funny. And through her ability to connect to the audience in that way, often funny, sometimes poignant like many of the great comedians, she connects them to the music in a deep and visceral way. As musicians, it's not necessary that we be comedians. If the music is impactful enough, it may not be necessary to connect the audience in any other way. I don't think we can accuse Keith Jarrett of pandering to the audience. But I think we do ourselves and our audience a disservice if we don't make some attempt to connect with them on a human level, to strengthen the musical connection. In my decades working with university jazz ensembles, I always encouraged each one of them to take a turn on the microphone, even though that was really difficult for some of them. I told them that it doesn't matter what you say, what matters is that you're talking to them. When we hear someone speak, we get insight into who they are, and that helps us appreciate the music that comes from the heart of the human being. The commenter specifically mentions Tommy Emmanuel, an incredibly versatile guitar player. In interviews, Tommy expresses a strong desire to please his audience. He describes it as wanting to surprise them, and he credits the magicians Penn and Teller with that inspiration. Penn and Teller are virtuosos at what they do, and they also have an engaging way to present the magic tricks. They are absolutely representative of people who achieve on a high artistic level while connecting with a broad swath of the population. And if you can do that, if you can stay true to your own artistic vision and create something that large numbers of people want or appreciate, that's the best. Stan Getz famously said, "I never played a note I didn't mean." He said he wanted it on his tombstone. It seems like a good principle for all of us. As examples of musicians who maintained a high level of artistic integrity while amassing large audiences, the commenter points to people like Frank Sinatra, Count Basie, Maynard Ferguson, and the Beatles. I surely don't disagree that those are great artists. But I think there are equally great artists who never reached that level of popularity. And when we go down the tiers to rank-and-file musicians like myself, and many others who are far above me, we're not going to succeed on that level. And if mass popularity is an immutable determinant of success or failure, then most of us are destined to fail. Now, just before I carry on, I want to remind you that I don't have sponsors and I don't sell courses or memberships on this channel. I do have several books published, including this one on jazz improvisation, and I offer one-on-one lessons on Zoom for people who want to take their trumpet playing or their jazz improvisation to the next level. Those are my sources of revenue. They help to support the channel, and you can find out more at chasesanborn.com. But there's one thing you can do for free, and I hope you'll do it right now, and that's click the like button. I thank you for that. At the end of my musical career, which at this point is closer for me than the beginning, I don't want to feel like I failed because I didn't sell out large shows. Even on YouTube, which is the latest chapter of my career, in relation to some other channels, the number of people who watch my videos is pretty small. But I appreciate everyone who does, and even with a relatively small channel, I've reached more people through YouTube than in any other facet of my life. And I've heard from enough of you to know that I'm having an impact on some level. As a YouTuber, do I wish for more views? Well, yeah, absolutely. It takes a lot of time to make videos, even one like this where I'm just talking to you and throwing in a bit of B-roll. It can absolutely be disheartening to put hours of work into something and then feel like the response is, It's the same as if you book a gig and 10 people show up. It's pretty depressing to look out at a sea of empty chairs. But you have to play for those 10 people as if they were 10,000. Otherwise, you really have failed, in their eyes, but more importantly in your own, if you don't deliver to the best of your ability, regardless of who's watching. I heard a funny example of this the other day. It was a comedian talking about Henny Youngman, who was known as the king of the one-liners. This comedian was walking down an empty street in New York, and just ahead of him, Henny Youngman walked out of a door and crossed the street. Henny didn't see him, so as far as he knew, he was completely alone. And just as he reached the far curb, a pigeon flew down and landed next to him. Without missing a beat, Henny said to the pigeon, "Got any mail for me?" So when the commenter says it's not about self-expression, I respectfully disagree. It has to be. We cannot second-guess our own musical integrity by trying to cater to what someone else thinks we should do. If you focus your efforts on delivering a product that you are proud of, then whether 10 or 10 million people agree that it is a good product or one that they want, you've succeeded on an artistic level. And we can't let anyone else or self-doubt take that away from us. If you made it this far, I think the content on this channel is a product you may want, and it's free. So go ahead and click one of the videos up there and subscribe for more jazz tactics.